Well. Clemson Tiger fans, South Carolina fans, and college football fans, welcome into a very special edition of the All In Show and the Above All Else Show. Yeah, that's right. Clemson and South Carolina are joining forces to make some great content for you tonight. I got me, your host, Tiger Paul Craven. We got Jordan Bowman in the back. We got Twisted Rooster. We're going to talk about all things Clemson football, talk about all things South Carolina football, and then maybe get into just a little bit of college football in general. Get your questions into the chat. Get your topics into the chat. Ask any of us what you want to know about from recruiting to fall camp to outlooks on the season. But without further ado, before I bring on my panel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us if you are not already subscribed. And as well, this is a live video. Likes really help us out. So if you're in the live chat right now, I know we got 26 people in there right now. Go ahead and hit that like button for us. It'll help us out. It'll project it out there and bring some more people in so we could chop it up about college football. But now that we got that out of the way, without further ado, bringing on my buddy Jordan Bowman and also my buddy Twisted Rooster. How you guys doing tonight?
Doing good, guys. How you doing?
I'm living the life, man. This is so exciting. I mean, we've been talking about this for really like a couple months now about really getting a show together. And, you don't really get to see a whole lot of live shows with two big rivals, pairing up. So this is really awesome. But yeah, I'm just really excited to talk about some Clemson, South Carolina football. The rivalry has really ramped up the last 12 months between really just across all sports, but especially in football with South Carolina getting the upset and beating Clemson in Death Valley last year. So I'm ready to talk about what both teams are looking forward to this season.
Yeah, and I agree with you guys. What's that old word they call frenemies? You guys are my friends, but Clemson's my enemy.
There you go.
But that makes it. But we're also teammates here at the Voice of College Football.
Absolutely.
And a little bit of background. A lot of people don't know. I know these guys have been here with Mark for a while doing their Voice of College Football. Well, I just started a couple months ago with Mark, and one of the very first people when I was actually in the conversation of joining the Voice of College Football that I was talking to on Twitter was Jordan Bowman. He was probably the very first person that knew I was going to join the family. And he congratulated me and asked me, he just said, hey, man, let's get together and do a show. And, of course, I go over and support their channel. And Tiger Paul told me the same thing a couple of weeks ago. He was doing a show, and I popped into the chat, and he said, hey, man, let's get together and do this. And I'm like, why not? We're teammates, brother. We're here to support each other, whether we're rivals on the field, but we're family here on YouTube.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We appreciate all the, because me and Jordan, we have been at this for a while on, the Voice of College Football, the Clemson channel. We kind of did previews for every game last season, and then we did, our post-game lives directly after each game, win, lose. Didn't matter. We were there talking about the game and about how it went. And it's just kind of nice to see the Voice of College Football family grow. Got the new South Carolina channel now. You got the Above All Else show over there. It's cool to see, the brand grow. It's cool for us to intermingle and come on each other's show. And, it's exciting, man. I'm glad. Especially when it's your rival. It means a whole lot to a whole lot of people, especially in the state of South Carolina. So it's going to be a great show.
Yeah,
I agree.
Argraw in the comments already. He said, "Boo! I want to see blood." It might get heated, possibly later in the show. Maybe we hit a disagreement or not. But really, this is a discussion about the state of South Carolina, Clemson, and South Carolina, the rivalry, all that. So if you were coming here looking for us to just rip into each other for an hour and a half, that's probably not going to happen. But who knows? We'll see what happens.
Yeah, who knows? Stay tuned for the season. Maybe we'll do we'll do something a little bit closer to the game that might resemble a little bit of trash talk and rivalry talk.
That's right. We'll set up a time during game week.
There you
Then
go.
we'll
Yeah.
come over here and rip
Yeah.
each other for.
Then
Okay.
we'll
At
take
that
the blood.
time, we may have our tail tucked, and you might not find Rooster Man if South Carolina's really bad. Nah, football is what it is. I don't coach the team, and I don't play on the team, but I can be a very passionate fan. But I did want to throw out a congratulations. I don't know if you guys saw this, but congratulations to Mark Rogers for being voted #1 college football YouTube channel and YouTuber. Congratulations to you there, Mark Rogers.
That's awesome, man. Congrats. Mark Rogers graciously gives us his platform in order to talk college football about our teams and what we're really passionate about. So that's awesome. Really glad to hear that. Congratulations.
But yeah, guys, how do you what's your first discussion, or I guess one of the things I wanted to point out has been a big topic of conversation. Of course, it always is during talking season. All the media day stuff was coming out. Did you guys hear about CW gonna carry some of the ACC football games this upcoming year?
I did see a little bit about that. I didn't even click on the article because I thought it was funny. Well, first of all, because the CW is, when I think of that channel, I think of some, the cheesy DC shows that they've done and some of the kind of campy, like family friendly stuff. And now they're starting to they're going to start airing ACC football games. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, we'll see how that goes. But it's interesting. I mean, the ACC has definitely been talking about trying to find new ways, new revenue streams, new places to kind of get the product out there. You're working at a deficit to the SEC, the Big Ten, so they're just trying to find any kind of way to stay relevant and kind of get more eyeballs on them. So it may be something that proves fruitful, but I don't know. I doubt it. CW is not the first channel I would think of, and probably not the first one I would go to if I was trying to expand my brand and get more eyeballs on me. But I don't know what you guys think.
No, man, it definitely sounds odd. Personally, sounds like a reach to me. But like you said, Jordan, it seems like the ACC is grasping at straws and trying to stay relevant when it comes to revenue right now. They started with the whole, incentivizing postseason play and doing kind of incentivized revenue there for some of the top tier teams in the conference. But the revenue gap is undeniable. It is massive, and I don't think working with the CW channel is going to close that gap in any way.
Yeah, actually, though, the CW is carried in a lot of markets, and I think it was ESPN that put that deal out. And they're going to carry some basketball also from the ACC. I think I've heard the first game is actually the Pitt. It's Pitt versus one of the Big 12 teams. It's like September 9th. There's going to be a CW game. So maybe it's it's ACC playing out of conference games that they'll carry. I think it's only maybe one game a week through the season. So I don't know if it's there. ESPN's not giving up the big ACC games. They're not going to get CW.
No,
they may give up some out of conference stuff, like a home game, if one of the bigger teams is playing someone that's out of conference. But anyway,
yeah, Mark kind of nailed it right there.
Taking the place of Bally Sports, well, I would 100% get behind that. Bally Sports is one of the most poorly run streaming networks I think I've ever used in my entire lifetime. I tried watching one of Clemson's basketball games last season, and it cut out with 2 minutes left in the game. The stream just completely ended. It just cut out right at the 2-hour mark.
Man.
So then there was only two, and there was like two and some change minutes left, and it was a close game. And I was like, okay, well, then I had to tune in to I had to tune into the radio to hear the rest of the call. Just an awful situation. So I mean, if the CW takes the place of Bally Sports and you send games over there, at least it's accessible. I guess that's the bright side for sure.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, at least we're getting close now, guys. We do have media days. When's the ACC media day? You guys know the for that?
Next
week or the following week?
I think next Tuesday. At least all the Clemson coaches. I don't know if it's ACC media days, but all Clemson coaches are going to be available to the media. I think next Tuesday. So I'm sure there'll be tons of stuff coming out. Tons of questions about the offense and Garrett Riley and the wide receivers and all that good stuff. So next Tuesday, I think we'll definitely the storylines will start forming for fall camp.
Well, we'll have a lot to talk about next week then, because I think SEC their media day starts next Tuesday too. I don't think Beamer's not on until Thursday, but they actually start on Tuesday. I don't know their lineup yet. I'll have to look at it, but yeah, I'm ready for some good football, man. I can smell it. We're getting there. We're getting past talking season, and we actually got to put some pads on and get on the field.
That's right.
100%. So I kind of, and Craven kind of mentioned it. I kind of want to get into some of the preseason expectations, really for both teams, and kind of, just. I guess we have to start with what happened last year. I don't like talking about that game, but it is important to talk about, and it kind of gives a lot of context to how both teams are feeling heading into the season. But everyone knows South Carolina went into Clemson, Death Valley, and upset. Clemson took their shot at a playoff appearance away right after beating a top 10 Tennessee team the previous week. So they closed the season really strong. We're really competitive with Notre Dame in the bowl game. So there's a lot of momentum for South Carolina. Shane Beamer has outdone expectations 2 years in a row. He wasn't expected to make a bowl game his first year, did it. Had some really nice wins, and then last season, obviously closing the year with those 2 top 10 victories and winning 8 games. That's huge, and you're kind of starting to see the excitement kind of build. So I don't know what are the expectations for South Carolina going into this season from a fan base perspective? What internally is there? Are expectations too high? Are they too low? Are there some things you're concerned about? I don't know.
Well, Vegas has South Carolina is a 6.5 over under. I think as far as fan expectations, you do expect to be better than 6.5 wins. I mean, you're coming off an 8-win season. The bowl games anymore. When we played Notre Dame, we were down to like one tight end, and he got injured halfway through the game. Still was a good game. Both teams made mistakes. It looked more like a NFL preseason game where no one was there as far as the starters. They all opted out or were injured but it was a fun game. It was a tough little game to play, and it's been a long time since South Carolina made it to the Gator Bowl. So I do think expectations are high. Now you always get the sunshine pumpers. They want to go out here and say that South Carolina is going to be 10-2, or we should be competing for the SEC East this year, which is the last year of the East. And I just try to temper people a little bit. Still year 2 of Shane Beamer. Still got a lot of questions offensively and defensively. Just, let him work. Don't put too much expectations to the point to where you're just so stressed out that you don't want to watch the Gamecocks play football anymore if we take a bad loss, because we did take bad losses last year. We lost to a terrible Florida team, actually got ran out of the swamp. And we lost to Missouri again. And nobody wants to lose to Missouri. I mean, Missouri probably was a sneaky good team, but not a good team. They put up a fight against Georgia, but yet they were still only a 6-win team. So you got to get past you got to get over the hump of beating the Missouris, the Kentuckys before you get to the point to where you feel you need to be talking about winning anything in the SEC as far as a championship. But yeah, kind of like you guys though. We got a new offensive coordinator. I think that there's some hype behind it. We as South Carolina fans don't really know what our offense is going to be. We get told what it's going to look like. It's going to open up more. You're going to see more passing out of Spencer Rattler because we do have questions in our running back room. And then Dow Loggins, I don't know if you guys know the history of Dow Loggins, but he was an NFL head coach. He was at Chicago. He was with the New York Jets. He ended up going to Penn State. When he came back to college, he was an analyst for Penn State, and he get hired on at Arkansas as a tight end coach, which he was an alum at Arkansas. So I look for our offense to lean a little towards what the Brawls offense is, where they kind of open it up and pass it and then mix in the run here and there. But we don't have a bell cow running back that is going to go out there and run for 1,000, 1,200 yards in the SEC this year. So we're going to have to generate it, screen passes, sweeps, use a lot of wide receivers, tight ends, short passing, just generate a rush game, which is basically what we had to do last year anyway. So I don't see that changing a lot.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm pretty familiar with Dowell Loggins. I'm a Titans fan. He was the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans a while back. So I'm pretty familiar with him. And I will say this about him. I don't think anything can be as bad from a play calling standpoint as what Marcus Satterfield was for South Carolina the past 2 years. I think really he was not a very good offensive coordinator. I felt like his scheme was bloated. He was trying to do way too much. And you saw when they kind of took some of the reins from him in those last couple of weeks of the season that the offense really opened up. Spencer Rattler was playing free. The receivers were playing free, and they were scoring points. And all of a sudden, the South Carolina offense that looked basically, just anemic for most of the year, looked like how a lot of people had expected them to be. So I think Dowell Loggins coming in, I think he's going to be a massive improvement, at least from what South Carolina had the most of last season. It really just comes down to, some of the concerns you mentioned, like the running back situation. Will you be able to generate a run game? Because that has been something that South Carolina has had concerns with in the past. But bringing back a quarterback is huge. South Carolina hasn't brought back a returning starter since Jake Bentley in 2018, I think.
Yeah,
that's pretty crazy.
Luke Doty was actually, in 2021, Luke Doty was supposed to be the starter. Well, he had got thrown in 2020. He's a young kid. He was a 4-star coming into South Carolina, but then he got stepped on in practice before the season started and broke his foot. So then we had to go out, and this is where the grad assistant coach that had retired from football had to put pads back on. Because our quarterback room, we were looking at a kid from St. Francis, Luke Doty, had a broke foot. I don't know at the time, I guess if they'd had thought about it, probably moving DeCarrion Joyner back into the quarterback room that may have been the smarter move after, watching the bowl game and how he played against North Carolina. But then you also kind of put yourself in a position that everyone's going to know what your quarterback does. He's a running guy, and he hadn't had a lot of experience passing the ball in college. So I'm guessing they did the best. As patched up it was, I think that was Beamer's best coaching job because he did more with less with that patched up offense and quarterback room than he did last year, I think, with Spencer Rattler.
100%. And that's just kind of what Shane Beamer does. And he's honestly made up for a lot of offensive deficiencies with being great on special teams, bringing Beamer ball 2.0 and all of that. So I talk a little bit about how the impact of special teams has been for South Carolina. And and has played a huge role in a lot of their their wins, and that's kind of part of the identity of the program.
Well, they were the number one special teams team in the country last year. But Beamer puts an impact on it. And I don't know how many college football teams do this. I know there's a lot that take another coach and put them over their special teams or a group of coaches. But Beamer went out and hired a specific special team coach. And that's what he does. And they talk to the kids that are coming in, even these big recruits and a lot of the starters. They fight to play special teams. They want to play special teams. Because a lot of them understand your percentage is higher to get in the NFL if you're a great special teams player.
Yep.
Than it is to make it as an offensive defensive player. You can be a specialist on special teams and still get into the NFL. So I think a lot of guys take pride in that. And of course, our punter is like 3 for 3 or 4 for 4 passing with 2 touchdowns. Generated offense, man. If you can get it, right?
Best quarterback on the team. Look at that. That's QBR's through the roof.
Yeah. He had the best stats in the SEC last year as far as completion percentage.
There you go.
But yeah, you have to, man. You guys know this. You went through this when Dabo got hired on at Clemson. New coaching staff, a team that was left pretty drained as far as talent. Now, there was some talent on South Carolina's team because we've seen these guys get drafted into the NFL. But Beamer's first question when he did player interviews, when he walked through the door at South Carolina, and he did independent player interviews with all the guys that were there. And the one thing that everyone told him, yeah, there's talent on this football team, but there's no team. There's a lot of eyes in this team. And that was the one thing. That's when they came out with the, above all else, love your brother, to create a football team, not just a bunch of talented football players scattered all through defense, offense. He preaches being a team and love your brother. And that's the above all else.
Yeah. I mean, especially and when you get that buy-in from your players, you talk about a new coach in Shane Beamer, and you focus on things. You talk about he brings in a coordinator specifically just for special teams, and that's kind of all he does. And you see it show up in big games. You look back to the South Carolina Clemson game last year, right? Special teams was huge in that game. It
was huge, all right.
That was the turning point in the game, right? Was South Carolina's special team and the lack of execution on Clemson's special teams, right? So and Clemson's seen it a couple times. You look back to the first national championship when Deshaun Watson was on the team, right? That onside kick that Alabama did in the national championship game. So, getting that buy-in from your guys to really care about special teams and having that specific coach where, this is your job. It's clearly paying dividends for South Carolina. And it matters in the big games because the bigger the game, the more talented the opponent, the lesser margin of error there is there for you to still be successful and win the game.
And it was the same thing like when we played Texas A&M. South Carolina never beaten Texas A&M. First play of the game last year is a 100-yard kickoff return. It set the tone for that whole night for South Carolina. Just the excitement got in the fan base. Williams-Brice Stadium was rocking, the lights, how it is. Everyone hates playing in Williams-Brice at night if South Carolina's competitive. It's just they get tired of the sandstorm. It just wears you out. It's like the cowbells of Mississippi State. People get tired of it. But it hypes the team, and that's what and they use special teams. They use special teams to create that momentum.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
But kind of like you guys, I don't know. Does Dabo? Do you guys actually have just like a special teams coach at Clemson, or is it another coach that's on the staff that kind of runs your special teams, or does Dabo do it? Maybe Dabo does.
Dabo definitely does not run special teams. Although I have a suspicion on who made that that little reverse, huddle that they did in the South Carolina game. I have a sneaky suspicion who made that call, but no, Mike Reed, Clemson's he serves as Clemson's special teams coordinator and cornerbacks coach. So Mike Reed, he took over the duties last season, so this was his first year doing it, and he hadn't coached special teams in like a decade. But he's retained that role into this season, so he's kind of the one, at least on paper, that's supposed to be overseeing all of that. And really, I mean, Clemson's special teams for the most part at the beginning of the year was really, really good. They were right up there in the top 10 as far as special teams units. They blocked a lot of kicks last year. That's something that we haven't seen from Clemson in a long time. They were better in the return game than they'd been in previous years, and then kind of when they hit that Notre Dame game, you kind of saw a little bit of you kind of saw some of the flaws, and there was also a really consistent issue of punting, and that kind of continued. Ooh. That was kind of a season-long thing. So really, it just comes down to one, finding a punter, which is a huge question mark for Clemson, and finding a kicker, because you're replacing a longtime starter in BT Potter, your second all-time scorer, leader among all kickers. So it's going to be special teams is really going to play another huge role for both teams. And South Carolina kind of knows what they're getting, because that's kind of the culture that Beamer and Pete Lembo, the special teams coordinator, have kind of instilled over there. But as far as Clemson is concerned, it's definitely a question mark, and that's kind of been something consistent throughout Dabo's tenure. It's kind of been up and down as far as the special teams department is concerned.
Yeah, definitely.
It's special teams. It's weird how a lot of teams view it, but if it wasn't for special teams in South Carolina, woof, they say our punter saved our butt a ton last year, and our field goal kicker is good. The fortunate thing for us is those guys are returning. I think we lost Josh Vann, who was our punt returner. But we brought in Eddie Lewis from Memphis, who was their punt returner, and I think he did really well at Memphis last year. So hopefully we can continue. Biggest thing is don't turn the ball over, right? No fumbling, no bad kicks.
Yep. Don't turn the ball over. That's the name of the game, man. You got to consistently win the turnover battle in order to be competitive in big time college football.
That's right.
Hey guys, I was actually just in the back room creating a banner, but that's okay. You got me in here.
I was wondering if you were just trying to pop in and say what's up, and I saw you in the Big 12. I saw you in the Big 12 show just now, so I didn't know if you wanted to come in and say something. But
I actually I wasn't going to bother you guys. I was just going to put it in a banner down here at the bottom of the page. But I will tell everybody, in case you wasn't here earlier, you can get a free Voice of College football chain. Keychain, not football chain, keychain right now. Go to topqualityshirts.com. They're free. And if you use promo code football, you can get free shipping on it as well. So it's completely free shipping and all.
Is that the equivalent of the Voice of College Football turnover chain? Is that what that is?
Yeah, that's what it's, a turnover chain. That's what that is. Yeah.
I like it. Yeah. Voice of College Football turnover chain. Get yours now.
Maybe we ought to get Mark one of those, one of them big gold chains.
Oh man, I get just to see Mark just iced out, just casually doing his normal show and just completely iced out. Oh yeah.
Hey, you know what? Now these are made on a 3D printer. They're really nice, and these are made on a 3D printer. So I could get like some gold filament, right, and make a gold chain, turnover chain, and just sell them on the Miami channel, right? Miami football, sports college football.
I'm trying to tell you. you might make Mario Cristobal mad. He don't like that turnover chain nonsense.
Yeah. But we'll bring it back for him. So anyway, just letting everybody know you can get a free keychain right now. Use promo code football and you'll get free shipping as well. Just go to topqualityshirts.com. I'm going to put the banner up here so that it will be up there for a little bit, and then y'all can change it back to hit the like button if you want to. I got too many banners up here. We got too many banners. I can't add this.
You're gonna have to kick some out.
I will work on that, and you guys have a great show. Thanks for bringing me in. I just wanted to do that.
Awesome. Thanks, Joey.
Well, we talk like you talking about Jordan. We talked about Dal Loggins. What are you guys' expectations of Riley and what he can do at Klubnik up there at Clemson?
I tell you what, I'm about as excited about Clemson's offense heading into this season as I could possibly be. And you've heard the talk all throughout YouTube, the college football community, even the big media talking heads, and they'll point out the flaws that Clemson, the perceived flaws that Clemson has heading into the season on offense. And the one thing they're going to point out first is they're going to talk about who is Clemson's wide receivers, right? And though we have some guys that are unproven, some guys that have not performed on the field due to injury, the cupboard is not bare at Clemson at wide receiver. I know that's a common misconception out there that, Clemson just doesn't have wide receivers. That's not true. It's not true at all. We got a massive tight end in Jake Brenningstool that's going to be a matchup nightmare for people. You got Bo Collins coming back. He's been our most consistent wide receiver outside of Antonio Williams last year. But he dealt with injuries as well last year. He had a shoulder injury, had an ankle injury. You got a big body guy like Adam Randall that's also very athletic, that was struggling with a torn ACL all last season, right? So he's coming in this season healthy. If those guys can stay healthy, you saw Cole Turner burst on the scene late last season. He was a redshirt last year. He burst on the scene late last season. You can see that dude's just raw speed, that he'll be a problem as a downfield threat. They have guys in the wide receiving room that could step up and really make a difference for this team. And I think they will. And with the Garrett Riley scheme, you always hear about the air raid scheme, right? Well, guess what? We got a guy, I don't know if you've heard of him, but Will Shipley and Phil Maffa in the backfield, about the best two-headed monster that we could hope for at Clemson, right? It's kind of reminiscent of C.J. Spiller and James Davis at Clemson, right? A little thunder and lightning action, if you remember that, Twisted. I'm sure you do.
Oh, yeah. I definitely remember.
But, you got a guy in Will Shipley who's maybe not as pure a running back as Phil Maffa, but a guy that you can spread him out, right? You can do two-back sets. He can leak out of the backfield and catch the ball very, very well. Super athletic. And then you got a guy in Phil Maffa that's just going to punish the defense for as many carries as you can give him. And not to mention, we got 4 returning starters on the offensive line. Yeah, are we replacing the left tackle? Sure. But we definitely have, a guy, Tristan Lay, that we look to step into that spot. Highly recruited guy that we look to perform well. And I think if you look at this scheme from Garrett Riley, if you look at what he did at TCU last year, you can't say that TCU last year is more talented than Clemson's offensive roster this year. No one in their right mind can say that. So if you can't say that, in my mind, you bring in Garrett Riley and his scheme and his ability to – you look at TCU's offense later. They have people running wide open, just receivers ridiculously wide open, and that's a testament to Garrett Riley and his scheme. And when you got a matchup nightmare in Jake Brenningstool, it's just a massive tight end, that's going to be a problem. You got a speedster in Antonio Williams, big guy like Bo Collins and Adam Randall on the outside. That can really stress a defense. Oh, and by the way, I think our running game is going to be really good. And he's not just going to air the ball out. He ran the ball more at TCU than he threw the ball. 54% of the time, I think he ran the ball. So I think Clemson will lean early, my opinion. I think they lean on the run early on in the season. They let Cade kind of get his feet underneath him, first-year starter. They let those wide receivers kind of grow and get their feet underneath them. And then, by the time the calendar turns October or into September, into October, the offense should be running wide open, in my opinion.
100%. And just to kind of echo, I think one of the biggest things, if you look at Clemson's offense the past couple of seasons, the biggest thing that jumps out to you when you watch them was just how difficult everything looked. How it looked like guys weren't entirely sure of where they were supposed to be. They were unsure of their assignments. They were unsure of what they were supposed to do. obviously the quarterback play was the most glaring issue as well. It didn't help that you had a lot of injuries as well at wide receiver and offensive line. And I think a lot of those factors is kind of compounded into themselves, and you had a really, really clunky, miserable watching experience of an offense. And I think the biggest thing with Garrett Riley's scheme is he's going to cut all of that down. It's going to be simple. He runs not that many different plays, but he runs them out of a lot of different formations. But he structures it so that it's easy for the players to learn, the quarterback to learn. It makes things simple from a progression standpoint, all of that. And I think that's really all this offense needed was just some simplification and just making things look easy. And I think that's kind of what Clemson fans are definitely looking toward. And obviously the main concern is, you got to have a guy that really steps up on the outside at receiver. Antonio Williams is great, but you need more than that. Bo Collins when he's been on the field, has been your most consistent receiver, but health has been an issue with him. And beyond that, you don't have a whole lot of proven depth. And we're all excited about Jake Brenningstool as well. And so seeing how the wide receivers step up and then seeing who steps up at left tackle, those are kind of the big question marks for Clemson coming into the season. That's really just that's really what we're all looking to see, because we're not really going to find that out till they open up at Duke, and that's not a slouch of an opponent. So, they won 9 games last year. So you really got to come in and step in. And, you're going to have the time to prepare during fall camp and all that for the game, but we don't really know what we got till we actually see it. But I do think there's lots of reasons to be excited if you're a Clemson football fan. And there's a lot of talented freshmen that are coming in this class as well that could possibly contribute. So at the end of the day, you gotta see it, but this is definitely a step in the right direction. The hire of Garrett Riley and kind of bringing Clemson back to kind of what the fans have been used to as far as offensive production.
Right, and there wasn't a better hire out there for Clemson to make, and it was something that most Clemson football fans at the end of last season, me and Jordan included, would have told you that Brandon Streeter would still be our offensive coordinator right now, but thank God Dabo pulled the trigger, and he couldn't have made a better hire, in my opinion. If anyone can name a name that he should have went after that would supersede the hire that he made, I'd be willing to listen to it. But lots of reasons for optimism. But, of course, like any other season you roll into, you got questions, man. There's question marks. And you talk about health. Health is a part of every team, right? If your best players don't stay healthy, regardless of their injury history, it doesn't really matter, right? Without your best players on the field, if Cade Klubnik, goes down, Clemson's football season probably looks a whole lot different than we're anticipating right now, right? So you need your main key pieces to stay healthy, and that goes for any college football team out there.
Well, I'll tell you guys this. If Spencer Rattler goes down and gets hurt this year, I'd tell Coach Beamer, go ahead. I know you don't want to say flush the season because of the seniors and everyone else that's on the team.
Yeah.
But the little freshman quarterback we got, that kid would be playing.
Lenore Sellers? Oh, yeah.
Just put him out there, let him play, let him learn, build for the future at that point. Because if Rattler gets hurt, he may come back. He may not come back in the season. He's got an NFL career to think about. So he may just opt out the rest of the year, heal up, and get ready for a draft. You know what I mean? So
you would hate to see something like that, man.
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah, but we all understand this out of our superstar athletes. If these cats are in their senior season and they know they have an NFL career coming, you can't really blame them. You hate to see it happen, but you can't blame them.
Yeah.
Why not make sure you're 100% when you get to the draft and you get into the NFL camps and combines and stuff to go out there and perform? NIL is great in college football, but it's not your career. The NFL is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like Jordan was saying, clunky offense. Good Lord. Boy, we had that last year. You couldn't get any more clunky than what South Carolina.
Good point.
We looked like a 10 man out there most of the time.
I don't know, man. We feel your pain because Clemson's offense was downright painful to watch at times. And even when we had success, it felt like it was so hard to put a drive together. I mean, you put a drive together and you score, and you're like, man, that looked difficult for everyone, right? The execution was never smooth. It just never looked easy.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, other than, some of our smaller non-conference games that we played last year, other than the Tennessee game, I never felt comfortable in any of those games. Of course, we got blown out by Arkansas. We got blown out by Georgia. We got blown out by Kentucky. But, I just never truly felt comfortable in any game, even if we had a lead. And it's just like, boy, we can't stop the run. When you're 120 something against the run, you just like, no lead is big enough. You know what I mean? It's like you're still in the fourth quarter, like, okay. I
wish this clock would hurry up.
Yeah, let's speed it up. So, clunky was definitely our offense last year. It's a good thing our special teams was really good. But the same thing, we've got an offense coordinator, and Jordan said he knows about dialoguing, smoothing out the playbook, making the calls easier. Because I'm sure Riley probably runs a lot of wide receiver. They read off of what the DBs are doing. Where a lot of coaches fail is they choreograph the plays before the play happens, and that's where Satterfield was terrible. He's telling the receivers where to go, where the receivers can't actually read and break off. We didn't even know what the hell a slant pass was. It wasn't in our playbook. We had a playbook of a million plays, but slant pass wasn't one of them.
Don't worry, because nobody told Clemson that you can attack the middle of the field. Did you know you can't throw a pass over the middle of the field? I didn't know either, but apparently Brandon Streeter thought that.
Yeah, yes, Marcus Satterfield is what. Yeah, and it really just kind of talking about this kind of makes me realize kind of just the parallels of the two schools as far as their offensive coordinator was. Just trying to be too complicated. You think you're I've got the perfect play drawn up, and not really leaving any room for guys to really just make plays and let your athletes be athletes, and not using the middle of the field, the lack of tight end usage, all of that. Just it's really, really, really similar, and that's kind of why Beamer was like, "You will not be retained. Find another job." And Dabo was like, "All right," especially after the Orange Bowl, he was like, "All right, no, this ain't working." And
you think about our tight end usage last year. I mean, you had Davis Allen and Jake Brenningstool in the same tight end room. Davis Allen's in the NFL right now, and you just ignored him.
And that's the game anymore in college football. Your tight ends, you know what I mean? Those guys are anymore tight ends. Now, we were growing up, tight ends were basically fullbacks.
They were glorified offensive linemen. But now these dudes are bona fide athletes, man. They're out there catching, balls. They're number one receivers on some teams. So it's definitely a different position now. We certainly underutilized that position last year.
All right, Realistic One, he came up with a great question. Kind of wants to hear our regular season predictions for Clemson and South Carolina. I don't know if you guys want to, all of us want to give our predictions for both teams, or we just give our prediction for our team. It'd probably be more interesting if we all gave our predictions for both teams. You kind of see where everybody lies there. But Kevin, I'll start with you. What are your predictions for South Carolina and Clemson? We'll just do both.
Well, when I did my South Carolina preview, and I did I've done a couple other South Carolina previews for some other YouTubers for their channels. Right now, the way I see it, 8-4 is what I'm comfortable with. Now, 7-5's a big possibility. 9-3, I'll tell you why. Because our road schedule this year scares the living crap out of me. We got to go to Kyle Field, Texas A&M. This is one of the games I picked as a loss. Yes, I understand. We beat Texas A&M last year. Texas A&M looked like a horrible football team last year, but Texas A&M is still a very talented football team. I'm not sure Wegman at quarterback. I've seen some people kind of rank him fairly high in the SEC quarterback rankings. I don't know where they're getting that from. I didn't see that out of him last year. Does he make improvement? But playing at Kyle Field, to me, South Carolina, we struggle on the road sometimes. Well, not sometimes. We've struggled on the road a lot lately. That was my first loss, was Texas A&M. Going to Tennessee, playing at Neyland Stadium is a house of horrors for South Carolina. So that was number 2 loss. And then my number 3 loss, of course, was Georgia in Athens. Even though we did beat them back in 2019, I don't know what Carson Beck's going to look like. I think everyone's hanging their hat in Georgia that this kid's going to be great, but we don't know. But I did pick South Carolina to lose that one. That's a road game again, 3 tough road games. And I actually picked us to lose to Clemson in South Carolina. I just don't know by the end of the season if we can improve, if the running backs room is better than what I think, and we got the same problem you guys do. Our left tackle got hurt in the spring game, won't be back. I don't see him being back. If he does, it'll be late in the season. And he was a starter. He had a lot of experience. So now we have to fill that. So we're shifting guys around to try to find a left tackle. So that kind of scares me. So that was kind of my 8-4 prediction on South Carolina. Now, could we stumble somewhere else? Fortunately, we get like Missouri's, we have to travel to them, but we get like Florida's at home, Kentucky's at home. What most people would say toss-up games, we get the vast majority of those at home. So that was my prediction on South Carolina. Now, going through Clemson's schedule, when I looked at their schedule, to me, and the hype is behind Florida State, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say, knowing the talent that's on Florida State, on paper, Florida State probably is the toughest game for Clemson as far as talent level coming back. Don't know if Jordan Travis is going to be able to repeat. A lot of times the second year, these quarterbacks don't repeat what they did in a year. So I'm not as convinced on Florida State. But I looked at Clemson. I think Clemson's worst. The worst I could project for Clemson is a 2-loss season. But I still think either way that goes, whether they're 11-1, 10-2, they're still winning the ACC. I still think they're going to be in contention to making the playoffs because I think the Pac-12 is going to eat each other up. I think the Big 12 is going to eat each other up. And I think the Big 10 is going to eat each other up. So I actually do think – I think Clemson's, right there, ACC champ, right around 3 or 4 college football playoff team.
You're not just saying that because we're Clemson fans right now. I'm kidding.
No, honestly, I look all across college football, and I try to look at every conference, and you start looking at the competition in each conference, and you look at like the Pac-12 where you're looking at you got Southern Cal, you got Oregon, you got Washington, you got Utah. There's 4 teams right there that's going to be playing each other that's going to put some losses in there. And then you look over at the Big Ten. You got Ohio State this year with Michigan back in there. Penn State's much better, returning a lot of players. I just think other conferences are going to cannibalize each other. And I don't know. I just think the ACC this year is kind of set up. I'm not sold on North Carolina. I watched North Carolina. Their defense is – unless they found some miracle over the offseason that I didn't see them do last year. Like everyone's picking, they're the favorite to beat South Carolina, and I'm like,
I don't know about that either.
Well, they're getting home points because the game's in Charlotte.
Yeah.
So one thing I'll say, Clemson and South Carolina needs to go in the state of North Carolina and just, walk back across the border with them trophies at the end of the day.
There you go.
I agree.
There you go. Yeah.
All right. Craven, you can go ahead if you're ready.
All right. So South Carolina, I think if I had to nail it down to a specific win total, I would say 7-5. I think that's pretty realistic for South Carolina this season. I could 100% see 8-4. You talk about the North Carolina game, first game of the season. North Carolina's got a ton of firepower. Their offense plays really well, right? Now they did lose a lot of weapons, but they still got Drake May at quarterback, and everybody knows what that guy can do. He can absolutely ball. But their defense is awful. And they return a lot of people, and I don't think that's a good thing for them. And they also return their defensive coordinator, and I think that was a mistake for them. So I could definitely see that being one of South Carolina opening up with that. But they do have a couple tough games. Tennessee. I think that offense is still rolling this season. That's a tough game. Georgia, obviously. And then Clemson at the end of the year. I think Clemson gets them back. I think there's a lot of motivation for Clemson this year when it comes to the South Carolina game. I hate talking about it, but it's unavoidable. You talk about the loss last season. That loss hurt, man. It hurt. Not like it hurt more than like just normally losing to South Carolina, which is not something we've done a lot as of late. Shout out to us, but they ended a lot. We had hopes for the playoffs still at that point because they had just beaten Tennessee, so that definitely paved the way. Everybody lost that needed to lose for Clemson to kind of slide into the playoffs last year, which I'm not sure that would have been a good thing for Clemson anyway. But you just look at how the game went. It was a sloppy game. It was a heartbreaking game. It's a game that Clemson could have easily won, and they lost. And vice versa for Carolina, right? The bounce of the ball. But I think they ended our home winning streak. We hadn't lost at home since 2016, the longest winning streak in the country. They ended the streak in the series that we had going. So it was a tough game, but I think Clemson gets them back there. But 7-5, I think, is super realistic for South Carolina, and they're one of them programs. They just got to keep building, right? They got to be patient. It doesn't happen overnight, and as much as us guys in the ACC hate it, they're in the SEC. They play in a tougher conference, a far superior conference to the ACC. So that's going to slow the growth. And that's going to make the path much harder for them to, achieve postseason success. So they just got to keep grinding, man. I think 7-5 will be a really good season for them, and it'll be another building block for Shane Beamer and his staff. As long as they lose to the Tigers at the end of the season, we can't. One of those 7 wins can't be against Clemson. Okay?
Yeah, no, I will not be a very happy camper.
I can't come on here 2 years in a row and eat crow to South Carolina.
No, you guys should go. If you guys listen, you should go to the Clemson channel. If you want to see us like miserable, me and Craven miserable, go to that Clemson South Carolina post game reaction. That was tough. I did that from my dad's bonus room, and I was just sitting on the couch. Like I was on my phone. I couldn't even pull out my laptop. I was so sick, and I was just, that was one of the worst days of my Clemson fandom for sure.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
At least as of late.
Yeah,
there's been some brutal moments, long ago, but
that was a tough one.
It's been pretty good.
And I'm sure it was a great day for our buddy Twisted. You were.
Actually, I was so scared because that game was so daggone close. I was so tight, just waiting on a mistake to happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just waiting.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know if I really enjoyed the game.
Right.
Now, like Tennessee, when we were blowing Tennessee away and Rattlers out there counting touchdowns.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah,
that
that's
was fun.
Yeah.
But, you know, those close games, especially, you know, they haven't been close lately. Right. You know, it took what? South Carolina went 3 years without even scoring a touchdown against Clemson. So it's like after a little while, it does kind of take some sting out of the rivalry when you're not competitive in the games. So just, you know, it being that good a game last year, and like you said, Clemson made some bonehead plays and calls, and so South Carolina did too. That first pick that Spencer Rattler threw, you just sit there and you go,
the safety,
Oh, yeah. He never looked off the guy. He knew where the ball was going, who he wanted to throw it to. Had the snap of the ball, and he threw it straight to the Clemson guy. So the Clemson guy knew where it was going to. It was pretty obvious because he just walked in. So, like, yeah, some of those games are so stressful, man. It's like you enjoy watching it, but then on the other hand, you're just like, I don't know if I can enjoy this. I need another beer. I'm going through it. You know what I mean? It's just like, you know, and like I said, we talked about offense and some of the issues on offense. Well, South Carolina defensively, man, if we can't stop the run. Now, I do think we have a better linebacker room this year than we've had in a while. We do have some experience coming back. Interior defensive lineman, I think we're okay. We did lose Zach Pickens to the NFL. You know, so I don't know. Someone's got to step up and fill those shoes. Defensive end still worries me a little bit. We are getting Strawn back, who was injured. Him and one of our linebackers, Mo Cabo, they were both injured in the Arkansas game last year. So they didn't really play. Defensive end still kind of scares me a little bit till I see the season, see how the guys play out. Defensive back, we lost 2 guys to the NFL, Rush and Cam Smith. So there again, you got to have younger guys step up. We don't know, you know, the guys we do have, Marcellus Dial and, you know, O'Donnell Fortune and some of those guys, they just got to step up, and we'll see. I mean, are they NFL talent? Maybe. I mean, we're returning both our safeties, so I'm not really worried about those cats.
DQ Smith and what's the other one?
Nick Emilmore,
yeah, the freshman. Yeah, he was a freshman last year. Yeah, and I listen. South Carolina they've always put out DBs. I never really worry too much about them on that front. That's been something that's been true over, you know, multiple coaching staffs, multiple DB coaches. I mean, South Carolina is going to put some talented DBs in the league. So, but yeah, and it's funny you mentioned the edge because that is a position of concern for Clemson too. With, you know, you lost Miles Murphy, KJ Henry to the draft, and along with Brian Brzee, defensive tackle. But edge is kind of a position of concern. You bring back Xavier Thomas, who's been here for 50 years now.
Yeah.
But other than that, you don't really have a lot of proven production. And XT himself hasn't been healthy. So, you know, that's the position of concern for Clemson. So it's kind of interesting, you know, because you talked about left tackle, kind of some of the parallels as far as the concerns for both teams. But we'll see. They're both programs have a lot to be excited about for sure.
We definitely don't have your running back room. I mean, we have some young kids, and we don't know really yet. But as far as like returning production, like you look at Clemson's backfield, you guys know you have returning production, right?
Oh yeah, we're barring injury, catastrophic injury.
Yeah,
right.
That is not an area of concern whatsoever.
Right. So at South Carolina, we had to move DeCarrion Joyner, who's also been at South Carolina for 50 years.
Yeah.
Like HT has for Clemson. The kid came in, quarterback, moved to wide receiver. Now he's a running back. Now he did beef up. You know, hell, he's still 6'2", 6'3", 230-pound kid. It's not like he's a small guy back there running the football.
Right.
And at playing quarterback, you figure he knows how to handle the ball, running through people trying to knock it out of his hand. It's just, I guess maybe he's got vision. We just don't know. When you do that, you don't know. So it is a concern if you don't know. And that's
Right.
part of the thing. We brought in Mario Anderson kid there from
Newberry.
Newberry.
Yeah.
Now, he had a lot of yards at Newberry, but we
He was
all
really
know
good.
Newberry doesn't play in the SEC.
That is true. Yeah, that is true.
So we just don't know. And it's a concern, but I also don't think – I think you're going to look at guys in the backfield, especially if Joyner's back there, people are going to have to watch out for some wildcat with him.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to watch out for some trick plays of him throwing the ball, faking the run. Kind of like they used him against North Carolina in the bowl game.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what you'll see out of him. I don't know if he's going to he could prove everybody in the world wrong. And I hope he does prove me wrong. I just don't know if he's that natural running back. But hell, if he's good at it and goes to the NFL, he's a real Gamecock, and I wish him all the love in the world, and I hope he makes $10 million a year doing it.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, he's an easy guy to root for. I mean, he's been in that program a long time. He's done what the coaching staff has asked him through 2 coaching staffs. You know, you're going back to Will Muschamp and then now Beamer. Like he's changed positions. You know, he's played wide receiver. He's played quarterback when they asked him to. Now he's moving to running back. I mean, that's the kind of guy that he's a program guy for sure. So, I mean, it would be really cool to see him get a shot at the league. Really, just a really easy guy to root for.
Yeah, it's fun to see guys like that, you know, that buy their time, you know, they don't leave, they keep their head down, they keep working, and then they have that final breakthrough season. That's a good story always.
All right. Craven, did you give your Clemson prediction or?
I did not give my Clemson prediction.
Let's finish that up, and then I want to talk a little bit about recruiting before we close up.
All right. So Clemson prediction. We'll start off at the beginning. You know, everybody knows this talk about Duke. This is kind of circling the internet right now. This is everybody's new favorite topic to talk about. Clemson's going to lose to Duke week 1, and you know the ACC is going to be scrambling, right? I don't see it happening. Am I going to sit here and tell you that it's an easy gimme game and Clemson's just going to walk into Duke and scorched earth and it's going to be over by halftime? That's not what I'm saying at all. But I just think Clemson is too good. I think they're too talented, and Duke had a good season last year, but they also played a lot of bad teams. They didn't play your toughest schedule, and honestly, they won by close margins a lot. So, do I think Duke had a great story last year, and they definitely overachieved and they took college football by storm? Absolutely. However, with that said, they're not beating Clemson week 1. It's not going to happen. So I could see Clemson dropping a game somewhere on their schedule. I mean, you think about the Florida State game, right? That's the end of September. So we start off with Duke. Then we got a couple of gimme games in Charleston Southern and Florida Atlantic. At least you would like to call those gimme games. They better be if we're about to have the type of season that we're hoping we're going to have. And then it's right into Florida State to close out the month of September, right? You know, we've already kind of hit on Florida State and their expectations. They had a good year last year, but they lost their 3 biggest games in the ACC last year, back to back, and they struggled late. Yeah, back to back, and they struggled late in games. They weren't good closing out late in games, especially when it was close. So, yes, they got a ton of talent coming back. They had an amazing transfer portal season, and they got a ton of talent. But at the end of the day, all the people running around and talking about Florida State is the cream of the crop in the ACC, and the ACC runs through Tallahassee, Florida. I don't know what you're talking about. You got to prove it on the field first. First of all, yeah, you can bring in a lot of transfer portal talent. That does not always equate to production on the field. You got to mesh these dudes together as a team and get them to play and buy into your scheme. And I think Mike Norvell can do that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Florida State's going to be a bad team. I think they're going to be really, really good this year. And because of that, I could see that being a really tough game for Clemson. And you think about how the season might go. It's tough to beat a team like that twice in the same season, right? So I could see Clemson going 11-1. I think we'll beat Florida State. But we do have a tough patch later on in the season where we got a bunch of road games back to back. I could see Clemson dropping a game. It's really hard to pick a team to go 12-0, right? Especially a team like Clemson that has some pretty significant question marks on the offensive side of the ball. Here's the thing: we think we got the guy at quarterback in Cade Klubnik, but do we really know that we have the guy? No. It's not proven on the field. He's got literal one start under his belt, and it didn't go well. Not his fault, but it didn't go well regardless. He had a ton of pressure in his face. He was getting hit. He was asked to throw the ball about 1.5 million times for whatever reason, and too much was put on his shoulders in that bowl game against Tennessee, and we got blown out and we got embarrassed. Luckily for us, it translated into a new offensive coordinator. So I'll take that if the result is what it is. I think it was worth it. So Cade Klubnik's got a lot of growing to do, but I think he will. And I've already talked about the wide receivers. That's the one thing people are going to point to consistently on Clemson. But I don't think people understand the talent that's there. Yes, is it unproven talent? But there's still plenty of talent there. I think Bo Collins has a killer year. I'm going to be honest. So I'll go a hard 11-1. Just because it's really hard to go 12-0, especially, in the grind of a season. I know we play in the lowly ACC, but it's still not easy to win week to week. I don't care who you are. So I'll go 11-1. Clemson has a huge bounce back year, and our offense looks closer to what you associate a Clemson offense to be. I'm not saying we're going to be 2018 Trevor Lawrence-led Clemson, but we will be closer to that than the 2021-2022 version of Clemson's offense.
All right. I'm going to start with South Carolina. I'm going to make this quick so we can kind of get to recruiting. I'm kind of feeling where Rooster was. I'm thinking 8-4 for this team. I am not going to bet against Shane Beamer after 2 seasons of him overperforming expectations. Like I think they were projected to win like 5.5 games his first year or something like that, and then it was like 6 the next year, and he exceeded those both times.
Where are they at this year? 6.5.
Yep.
Yeah, that seems low, man. I would definitely take that over.
Yeah, I think a South Carolina over is. I think that's a pretty safe bet because really, despite the question marks on that team, this isn't the first year that South Carolina has had question marks with Shane Beamer, and 2 years in a row, he's gotten the most out of his roster and gotten some big time wins, especially last year. And if you really think about it, they could have. There was room for more wins last year, and they lost some games they probably shouldn't have. So, I think I'm going to go 8-4. I think, bringing back Spencer Rattler and the receivers, Juice Wells, and just kind of that core of that offense. Well, they do need to find a running game, but I do think that Dowell Loggins coming in is going to keep things simple and kind of open things up for that offense, and they'll be tough to stop. We'll see how they do defensively, but I do think that they can. I think 8 games is definitely attainable. As far as the losses, I don't know. It's hard to pick 4. It's hard to choose which 4. I think because they have some winnable games, they have some toss-up games, and they have some games they should win, and they also have some games they'll be outright underdogs in. But obviously, going to Kyle Field is tough, as Rooster mentioned. Tennessee is tough. Georgia is obviously the big monster on everybody's schedule in the SEC East. That's going to be a tough one to win as well. And then obviously the rivalry game at the end of the year. So I think those are 4 pretty realistic losses. But I do think they'll. I think part of the growth of South Carolina as a program is winning the games that you're expected to win, and I think they're going to do that this year. So I'm feeling 8-4. And then as far as Clemson, I'm feeling. I'm kind of in that 10-2. I've kind of gone back and forth between 10-2, 11-1 because I still have reservations. As excited as I am about the offense, I still have reservations. Obviously, because we don't know. There's a lot of things we don't know. Is Cade Klubnik really ready? Has he taken that second year jump that we're all expecting? Have the receivers really developed in this new offense? I mean, Garrett Riley has had that instant impact everywhere he's been to this point, but again, it's just you don't know till you see it. So if I had to pick two losses, I'm thinking 10-2, 11-1 is definitely there as well. But I'm gonna go 10-2 for now. Be kind of conservative and say I think the two losses. I think we haven't really talked much about Notre Dame, but I think that's a game that's going to be tough. They come to Death Valley, and instead of Clemson going up there, but Notre Dame has the best offensive line on Clemson's schedule, bar none. It's not even close. Mm-hmm. They returned basically everybody. They have one of the best tackle duos in the country, and you saw last year how well they played. They pushed Clemson's defensive line around, especially in that second half. And Clemson's going to have some youth. He's going to have some youth behind the starters. So that's going to be a question mark. And bringing in Sam Hartman from the transfer portal is obviously a big addition. So I think a loss to Notre Dame is definitely possible. And then I'm going to go with at NC State. I think that's just because of that it's in that road stretch. What is it? Miami, NC State, and then you got Notre Dame, and there's kind of that.
Yeah, stretch. That's that tough 3-game stretch. It's Miami, North Carolina State, Notre Dame, and then Georgia Tech.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go NC State if I had to pick a second loss, just because it's tough to play up in. It's tough to play in Carter Finley. It is a really good, underrated atmosphere when that fan base is live, and they have some expectations. They bring back a lot of talent on defense. They brought in Brendan Armstrong from the transfer portal, Robert Anae from Syracuse. That's going to be a tough. That could work out beautifully, but we'll see. But Robert Anae has definitely gotten the most out of the talent he's had at multiple stops. He did it at Virginia. He did it at Syracuse. I think he'll be able to do it at NC State. So I think 10-2 for Clemson for now, but I definitely think the ceiling is. I mean, Clemson's going to be favored in every game on their schedule, I think. So that 12-0 is definitely 11-1, 12-0 is definitely within the realm of possibility. But I do think the thing I'm watching for Clemson the most is, does the offense look? Are they putting up points? Or does the offense look fun? Yeah. Now, because Clemson could have a really good offensive season and still lose 2 games. But so I think it's really just how do you look if you lose 2 games, how does it look? Do you have some of the same issues you've had offensively in previous years, or if you lost 35 to 32 and you're like, okay, well, or you're 45. Hopefully the defense isn't giving up 40 points, but if that unfortunately happens, I'd rather it be you lost the game because you gave up points instead of the offense just kind of went, just kind of struggled to a halt. So I'm feeling 10-2 for Clemson. And
that's the thing you hope to see for Clemson's offense heading into this season, right? Is you hope to see that explosiveness back on that side of the ball. That's something that Clemson has not had for 2 seasons now. No, not even a glimpse of explosiveness. True ability to go over the top of a defense and really put a dagger into somebody. We have not seen that from Clemson's offense in 2 years. So I think we'll know very early on if that explosiveness is back. And if it is, it's going to shape up to be a pretty good season. But, yeah, I agree with the Notre Dame. That's going to be a tough game because I could still reckon back and think about that game and Clemson's defensive line just getting blown off the ball. And that was a defensive line that was, talked about going into last season as one of the best in the country. But in that game, you could not tell. The Notre Dame offensive line was reestablishing the line of scrimmage on almost every play. And part of that was Clemson's offense couldn't move the ball, and they were putting the Clemson defense in very bad positions. So if we can solve some of the offensive issues, I don't think Notre Dame has near the success that they do or that they did have last season. So we'll see. And then you always got to talk about the sneaky Syracuse, man. It sounds funny, dude, but like there is something about Syracuse and Clemson. I've talked about it on here numerous times. Everybody knows how I feel. I don't know what it is about that, but it never seems like an easy game, regardless how good Clemson is, and I don't know why.
That's how we were with Vanderbilt for a while. Now we've beaten a lot of times in a row.
Yeah,
Vanderbilt still, like year before last, if it wasn't for like a last-minute drive and score a touchdown, we would have lost.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone, we have that same little thorn in our side in Vandy. And I'm kind of like you guys. That's what I want to see this year. I want to see play calls getting called in, quarterbacks not looking confused. The offense looks like they know where they're going. The offensive lineman looks like they know who they're blocking. Because I haven't seen that in 2 years. So I want to see that at South Carolina. I actually want to see Spencer Rattler not standing there doing this. What are we calling? What are we doing?
Right. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. And this is a really important season for both programs because they're both trying to, South Carolina's trying to ascend and Clemson is trying to kind of get back to where, they've been the past several years. And, they both bring in new offensive coordinators. They have high hopes for their respective offenses. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to see kind of what both teams look like heading into that matchup. But I wanted to kind of close the show with a little bit of recruiting because honestly, Clemson and South Carolina collectively as programs, I don't think I don't think there's been a better year so far in recruiting, at least in the history of the state, than what's happening right now. I think both programs are putting together some really, really, really nice classes. South Carolina has done a really good job in state, beating out Clemson for multiple in-state offensive linemen.
Stealing all our offensive linemen, man. Yeah. What the heck, dude? What's up with that? Share the wealth, man.
Yeah, we don't appreciate that. Our offensive line recruiting is now on the toilet.
Yeah, but all the Clemson fans tell me they don't need South Carolina recruiting because Clemson recruits nationally.
Well, look.
Yeah. Well, we would rather be winning battles in state than not. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But kind of talk about what kind of the how Shane Beamer is kind of putting together this class and what kind of pieces you're still that are still on the board that you're really looking forward to.
Well, I think right now, and South Carolina fans are really getting impatient because we still have one silent commit that's out there that no one knows who it is. Unless you're an insider, I guess they probably know who it is, but I don't know. But there's been some players out there, some wide receivers and stuff that have committed. Keelan Adams, that committed to Virginia Tech today, was high on South Carolina's radar. So there's still some impatience out there. We did get a kid, Matthew Fuller, out of Georgia. That was a 3-star running back. Recently got bumped up to a 4-star. But we're still out there with some big names. Right now, everyone's saying South Carolina's a little bit behind Ohio State for Dylan Stewart, the 5-star kid, defensive end. Daniel Hill, we're battling with Alabama for him, running back out of Mississippi. Paler, kid named Paler, wide receiver out of North Carolina. We're battling NC State for that kid, Jonathan Paler. So if we can land some of these, I think Gamecock fans will relax a little bit more. We did get some more offensive linemen coming in 2024. We already got a quarterback, 4-star kid, Dante Reno, he was in the Elite 11 coming in. So right now, you just got to have some patience. And, you know, the way football is now, guess what? If you don't fill the class up in recruiting, you're going to fill it up in the transfer portal. I think the one thing that South Carolina fans really want to see, they're waiting on to hit a big-time wide receiver and a big-time running back. So if they get Daniel Hill and they can get Paylor, I think they'll relax a little bit and calm down. I think that's it. They just looked at, we've done so well in the trenches. Where's our skill players? That's what they want to see.
Right.
They want some skill players.
Yeah, and you know, it's really impressive just kind of how Beamer has sold his vision for the program, and it starts with the trenches, and that's something that, you know, South Carolina has kind of, well, they haven't, I won't say they've lacked, especially they've had some really good defensive linemen, but you know, offensive line has never been, especially under Will Muschamp, they didn't have a ton of great offensive linemen, and the class last year that South Carolina pulled was really, really good. And, you know, they're doing it again, winning battles for, you know, Cam Pringle and Josiah Thompson and Blake Franks. So it's kind of, it's pretty impressive what Beamer is kind of doing in state. And speaking of in state, I feel like there's kind of this stigma around South Carolina recruiting in general, the state of South Carolina, as far as the talent in the state. I feel like there's a lot of people that don't really understand that there's a lot of great players in state. I feel like it's been an under-recruited state, especially when you consider it's sandwiched in between North Carolina and Georgia, and, you know, and Tennessee's over there too. And so those states seem to get a lot more attention, but there's a lot of, because South Carolina is not as populated, they don't get as much attention as far as the players in state. So, like, what do you think, about that?
Growing up in South Carolina, here, the biggest thing I've kind of realized, there are a lot of small high schools. You know what I'm saying? It's just, they don't have, you know, of course, there's the bigger schools around, you know, Greenville, Spartanburg area, Columbia, down around Charleston. There are some really big, great football programs, but there's so many little smaller high schools that are scattered out through the state of South Carolina. I think there's players out there, but because the area they live in or the school they go to, they don't get the recognition. And I think that's probably a nationwide problem too, with a lot of these kids that don't go to the bigger schools. I just don't think they get seen, and their coaching's not as good. You know, you go to a small high school, you're lucky to have 3 or 4 coaches on a football team that are actually getting paid to be there other than volunteers. So I don't think they have the facilities to work out. I don't think they get a lot of the coaching that a lot of the big schools get. Hopefully that changes now that kids can kind of transfer around. But if the parents don't have the money to get their kid to a bigger school, and I don't think there's as many developmental programs in South Carolina. Like living in Florida now, man, these kids down here get a football as soon as they can walk.
Oh, yeah.
And there is no off season when it comes to practicing and running drills. There's so many coaches. You know, there's a lot of former South Carolina guys that are down here in the state of Florida, like Ace Sanders, that runs camps with all these young kids. You know, every Saturday, Ace Sanders is running a camp over in Palmetto, Florida, where he's got kids running hills, up and down hills, doing football drills with them. And these kids range from anywhere from 5 years old to 15 years old. So I just think there's more development in like Georgia and Florida when it comes to developing kids at a younger age.
Yeah, and when you don't have those kind of developmental programs, I mean, you're not going to get seen. And especially the recruiting services aren't really going to do, are always going to do their due diligence as far as looking into the kind of the talent in the state. I feel like it's definitely been an under-scouted region that you can find a lot of gems, and both Clemson and South Carolina have done that and found really talented guys in state that just didn't get a whole lot of love, didn't get a whole lot of I mean, there's not as many camps that are run over here. So I think especially nowadays, going to camps and kind of getting eyeballs on you is a really big deal and kind of affects a lot of the ranking these days and not as much of the high school film because and that kind of changes things a lot. And so I definitely think that there's a stigma kind of there. But Craven, what do you think about it?
Yeah, honestly, I agree with Twisted a lot. It is just I think there's a lot of talent, but again, when you go to these small schools and they're not playing some of the bigger higher talent, it's just hard to get seen. I mean, you think about all the high schools, there's so many of them, and these recruiting services can only pay attention to so many players. I mean, you can only scout so many players, right? And a lot of times when you're in these smaller teams, these smaller programs, it's not that they don't have talent. It's not that I think there's plenty of wasted potential D1 talent out there that just never gets discovered because like Twisted say, where you play, where you live, and part of it is like a lot of those dudes are really good, but their parents don't have the means to up and move their kid to a team where they're going to get exposure and pay for all these camps and all this travel. I mean, recruiting has become, and it's not just football, it's kind of every sport. Recruiting has become this whole thing where like it's expensive and you have to, if you have a kid with college aspirations and they want to play big time college sport, whether that be football, baseball, softball, soccer, whatever, like it's really a burden on the parents, to pay this money and get in these travel teams and pay these private coaches and go to these camps that you got to pay to go to. And, it's all these steps that and all this travel and these hotels and all this stuff you got to do to get exposure because of where you live. And, there's a lot of rural communities in South Carolina with a lot of good talent, but for, a lot of those reasons I just stated, that talent's just never discovered. And it's really on the major universities in Clemson to identify that talent, right, and build those relationships with all those high school coaches, and identify those diamonds in the rough, if you will. And they may not even be diamonds in the rough; they may just be dudes playing for a small school that nobody's ever heard of, right? And their school may not be very good at football, right? Maybe they're winning 1, 2, 3 games a year, and they're not getting any exposure, right? So, right. I think that's a big part of it as well. Not all these kids' parents have these means to get them on the radar of a lot of these programs. So that's why you see a lot of dudes go JUCO. You see a lot of dudes, go to your smaller D2, D3 schools. And you look at some of that D2, D3 football, man. Some of those dudes you see playing, you're like, man, like this dude can't make it? Like, no way.
And you see them show up on Sundays.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's you go through when they introduce themselves and tell what college they're from. You're like, he's from where? Where's that at?
Yeah, they don't make the draft, but they make it into these NFL camps and stuff that they get invited to go in, and all of a sudden they're on the special teams, what we had talked about, and then they're in there. Once they learn and develop. I say this all the time. I don't know you guys' opinion on this, and some people argue with me about it. Would you rather have all the talent in the world, 4 and 5 stars, or would you rather have 4 stars and 3 stars and a great coaching staff that can develop football players and make it a football team? Because we saw, like Morgan we saw what happened with Texas A&M. Yeah, they brought in that big recruiting class and all these guys, and all they did was get in trouble. They kept all that eye and never made that team. And then, of course, a lot of guys are gone now because they're smoking weed in the locker rooms and just doing whatever. But they bought a good team with NIL money. On paper, the best recruiting class in the history of college football.
Yep.
But what have we also seen with Texas A&M? All the talent in the world, terrible coaching.
Wasted.
7-8 win Jimbo Always recruiting in the top 10, but he can never finish in the top 10.
Right.
It's like I'd rather have a great staff that can develop kids. You know, take a 3-star and make him a 4-star.
Right.
Make him a 5-star. And you can't put I always tell people this, you can't put a star on a kid's heart.
No.
And if that kid's willing to work and get out there and put in the work day in and day out, and he's the first guy in, he's the last guy to leave, and he's in that film room and he's learning, those are the kids that are going to be in the NFL. And it doesn't matter what star they have when they walk through the door. The first.
Talk about a guy like Hunter Renfro, right, from Myrtle Beach. Where's he at now?
Yeah,
he's getting paid in the NFL.
2-star option quarterback.
Well, South Carolina's greatest quarterback of all time, Connor Shaw, was a 3-star. He was a 3-star. You know, you don't know. These kids get out and they work, stay out of trouble, put their head in the book, stay in the film rooms. And if they're not there, they're in the gym or they're out running drills. And you know, I have a grandson and he wants to play football, and I'm like, you got to get out there and you got to set your mind and you got to get out there and work for it every day. It's not going to be given to you.
Right.
There is no off season.
Yeah, I mean, and that's you talk about it, and that's why I think it's important to have a coaching staff who knows their program, right? And they've built their culture and they've built their program their way. And you have to be a gatekeeper of that, right? You have to ensure the guys that you bring in are complementing your culture and complementing your team. Yeah, you want the 5-stars, right? You need some of those dudes. You need the 4-stars, but you got to ensure that they're the right ones. Just because they got 5 stars by their name doesn't mean they're the right one for your program and what you do. So, you know, everybody needs those guys. I mean, talent is the lifeblood of college football. You're not going to be a good team if you're not talented. So let's not, make no mistake about it. You have to be talented. You have to bring in good recruits. But like you said, it is a developmental game. And if you don't have a coaching staff that is capable of developing players, right? Because you are going to get some of those 5-stars. You're going to get a lot of 4-stars. But then you got to develop the depth behind those guys, right? You got to develop a team. There's not very many programs in the country that are just going to have, 40 plus 5-stars on their roster. Not everybody's, Alabama, not everybody's, Georgia just racking off or, 5-star after 5-star. So you got to develop. That's the reality of college football.
Yeah, and a lot of times the second man in line, you might have a 5-star starter. You look at your defensive backs. You might have a 5-star starter. The chances of you having another 5-star sitting on the bench behind that guy in this day and age with the transfer portal and NIL deals, good luck.
Yeah,
you better take that 4-star kid or a high 3-star kid and develop him.
Yeah, and that's what makes college football so difficult now, right?
Yeah,
because that dude sitting behind that starter, whoever he is, he's looking around, man. He's like, hey, I get no playing time here, right? And then boom, he's gone. And if you're not constantly developing your roster, if you're not constantly recruiting your roster, like we talked about, it's going to be rough. It's hard to keep depth on a college football team now, like that quality depth that you need to make deep runs and become a successful playoff team, or make to win conference championships, to get big time postseason wins. It takes depth, man. Those first guys are great, and you need those guys to win, but they can't be on the field every snap. So you got to have depth behind them to come in and give you quality snaps when those guys are on the sideline getting a breather and drinking some Gatorade. So, and
definitely keep Mike Norvell out of the DMs of your players. That'll be all at Florida State. Because everybody likes to talk about Jaheim Hill going to Florida State. Well, guess what? His damn roommate at South Carolina, Gilbert Edmonds, at Florida State too. So he bought a package deal when he got.
Dang. Just ripped 2 of them away from you.
Oh,
yeah, they just sawed out the little dorm room, set it on a trailer, and rolled both of them down. No.
That's funny.
Money Mike. But no, it's great. But yeah, you guys made excellent points, and that's really what separates the programs that win at the highest level from programs that are just really good. And I think when Clemson and South Carolina have both been at their best when they've been doing that. I mean, when Steve Spurrier was winning double-digit games a year, South Carolina, I mean, they recruited pretty well, but they had a lot of guys, a lot of the names that really helped them win a lot of those games weren't super highly recruited guys. And Dabo's done the same thing. And you have to, the guys that nobody talks about are the ones that really build your depth and the ones that are going to put you over the top to win a conference championship, a playoff game, national championship. Those are the things. Those are the kinds of players that really move the needle. All right, guys. This has been great.
Oh yeah, I've had a ton of fun with you guys, man. I'm glad we did this show. It's been a blast.
100%. And when we were talking about it, I was like, man, how is this going to go? Are we going to be going at each other, or what's going to happen? But this was a really awesome show. And I think it kind of, I feel like Clemson and South Carolina as a rivalry, I don't think it gets the respect it deserves from a national standpoint. I don't think people realize how deep the ties between and the between both schools are, and it goes back far beyond the football field. It's state and political history all intertwined. It kind of reminds me of like the Egg Bowl, Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Like there's a deep rooted institutional hatred.
Yep.
And so I think it's one of the best rivalries in college football. It may not always be a top 5 matchup, which it's not like Alabama, Auburn, or Ohio State, Michigan in that sense. But it's I think when you consider just the amount of vitriol and the amount of history between both schools, I think I would put it up against almost any rivalry in college football. So I hope this show kind of highlighted both programs and really brought some attention there.
Yeah, like I said, I enjoyed the show, and I've told people before, being from the state of South Carolina, I would take an undefeated South Carolina and an undefeated Clemson going into that rivalry game every year. I would, but on the other side of that, South Carolina's got to hold up their end of the deal too to make the rivalry stand out more nationally. You can't go to losing 7 in a row and not score a touchdown 3 years in a row. And think the national spotlight's going to be put on your football program on that game. Yeah. And it happens to a lot of rivalries. The Alabama-Tennessee, when they're for a long time, when Alabama was running away from Tennessee stepped up and beat them last year. It helps rivalry games if both teams are competitive. Yeah. And that's what, that's what I want to see. And I think it also helps, like we were talking about the high school kids in South Carolina. If both teams are competitive and these are good games, we're not losing these kids out to Georgia and Alabama and LSU and all these other people that are coming into the state. Because there was a time, man, them guys were coming into South Carolina and they'd take the best players out. And Clemson, Dabo, and now Shane Beamer's back. They're stopping that. They're kind of keeping the Georgias. Georgia's going to get 1 or 2 every once in a while, and it depends on the area of South Carolina. Some of these kids get out of the state, but that's where you got to start there. And then everybody's got their area with their favorites. South Carolina all of a sudden fell in love with the DMV area, and that's where we're getting our kids from.
Talented area. Yeah, for sure. I mean, Clemson's had some really nice players come out of there.
Appreciate it, guys, man. I had a blast. We'll do this again later in the season, maybe the week of I know that we wouldn't be able to do it on Thursday because it's Thanksgiving, but
right.
Sometime earlier that week if you guys ain't out, or maybe even the week before. get together and do a little rivalry show.
Yeah,
absolutely. We're gonna have to do it because
for sure.
We could, it would be really cool if we got like a big Clemson, South Carolina panel. That would be dope.
That would be cool. Yeah, get a bunch of Clemson and South Carolina fans up here, and we can duke it out on YouTube before we duke it out on the field.
I'd have to get my buddy Jackpot over here with me.
Oh man, I need Jackpot on there.
Jackpot's got to come.
There's not many of us South Carolina YouTubers out there that do trash talk.
Well, you start working on Jackpot now. We'll definitely make that happen, and do a preview to Rivalry Week. That'll be a great show.
All right, guys. Like I said, I always like to thank Mark Rogers for letting us hold up his big channel and just giving us opportunity to be a family here at the Voice of College Football and get to know guys like you and do great shows like we're doing right now. So I'm always thankful for that.
Yeah. Man. All right, guys. To everybody listening, thank you guys for tuning in. This show went longer than I thought it was going to, but there's so much to talk about, and you guys were great sticking around with us. So thank you guys all for tuning in. We hope to do this another time later in the year, but this has been great. But until then, you guys can check if we have our individual shows. Obviously, we have the All In show, and Kevin has Above All Else. We go live at the same time, so you'll have to split your time. But if you're a South Carolina Clemson or a Clemson fan, you're probably going to pick one over the other anyway. But Thursdays at 7 p.m. for both shows, so make sure you guys check those out, and give the Clemson and South Carolina channels a subscribe as well, because we're really trying to build these channels. Really helps Mark and helps the individual channels as well. But yeah, guys, we will. I'm Jordan Bowman. He's Tiger Paw Craven to my left, and Twisted Rooster below us. And until then, we will see you guys next time.
See you guys.
See you guys.